Hello, welcome. I'm Julie Wallace, and I'm going to talk to you today about infant and toddler development and are they harmed by screen time. I'm going to share some really cool information about infant and toddler development. I'm going to simply summarize the latest research from the American Psychological Association and some other sources. I'm going to explain why it actually can help you make some guilt-free decisions. So basically, I'll read the science so you don't have to. I'm going to keep it so it's not so boring. But to recap from my last video, the professional guidelines are very rigid. And I think that's causing parents to just ignore them, and that's not healthy either. So my goal is to build a bridge and help parents to find a place between those professional guidelines and their actual lived experiences. And what do we really know about those risks, and how can we tailor our parenting plans around them? Basically, can we find a better place to start? In the United Kingdom, they suggest that their guidelines shouldn't actually be based on time. So you can feel free, put away the stopwatch. We're going to talk about a different way to look at it. So we want to look at things by age. How old is your child? And what is the actual risk? And how are we managing their health? And is this screen actually impacting their health and development? So basically, what developmental stage are they at? What is the physical risks, and are they getting an adequate amount of physical activity, and is it impacting their sleep? We do know that screens can easily impact sleep, and then sleep has a really adverse effect on health if we're not getting enough. So those are some of the things that we need to manage. Total caveat here, let me tell you, please believe me when I say there is absolutely no judgment from me. If you're not meeting those guidelines, that's okay. My goal here is to build a bridge between your actual lived experience and these professional guidelines, that we can find a place to meet in the middle where parents can feel some sort of peace of mind and yet not totally ignore those things. So I've been working in the human services for more than 25 years. I have a degree in neuropsychology and a degree in social work, but I want you to know that I actually don't think I'm the expert here. Everyone is the expert in their own lives. And I think what the goal of professionals is to lay out information that people can actually pick up, use, take, drop, leave, tailor it to your life. But it's really just about making sure that you have the information in a way that makes some sense. Can you use it? Can you do anything with it? Sometimes these guidelines are so rigid that I don't think we really know what to do with them. And ignoring them isn't the solution either. So I wrote this book, Nurturing Technogens, 8 Essential Skills in Parenting the Technological Generation. And the reason I wrote this book was actually with the hope that parents wouldn't have to go through what I went through. I knew a lot about parenting before I had kids, but then the world changed and screen time, everything happened and changed so fast that I made a lot of decisions that I probably wouldn't have made if I'd had better information. And now that information didn't exist when my kids were born, but it does exist now. So that's what I'm trying to share with you. Essentially, there's a lot of things happening all at once. Use extreme caution if you're going to ignore those professional recommendations. We do know that harm is occurring, but what exactly harm is that? So let's talk about development. We're going to be talking about kids from 2 and under today, and we are born unfinished. There is so much development happening after you're born that if you continued to grow at the rate you do in the first 3 months of your life, you would end up at 30 feet tall. So it's happening fast, and don't underestimate it. You won't believe how quickly this time goes. Don't miss a minute of it and make the most of it. So one of the things that happens after we're born is our eyesight. We're born being only able to see little tiny shadows. We can see some black and white, but it all happens really quickly. We develop very quickly after we're born. Our eyesight, just a simple thing about looking around, playing with objects, picking up an object, moving it around, these are all things that are helping to develop our eyesight. When a parent points across the room and the child follows their eyesight, those are all developing our sense of space, our time and space. And those things, they need physical movement and interactions with the environment to actually develop. One of the problems that our optometrists all around are showing a lot of problems that they're seeing with kids because of screens that they've never seen before. And there's a blog called Meet Circle that I actually interviewed Dr. Jeffrey Emerson, and he narrowed it down. So one of the things, the depth perception, say that 5 times, So our ability to see far away when somebody's throwing a ball at us, to see, where that ball is, these are all really complicated things. They seem simple because we've always been able to do them. And suddenly, we're not training our bodies to learn these things anymore. So it can be a problem for our entire lives. The other thing is early onset myopia, meaning that we can't see far away. So this is something that's happening far more common than it ever would have before. Headaches, sore necks, blurry vision, tired eyes. Blue light actually can harm the eyesight. And one of the things that's happening is when you're staring at a screen, they've shown that you're blinking less than half as much as you're supposed to. But the thing is it's not the actual screen for the most part that's causing the problem. It's the lack of other things in our environment. So we have, and that's why they suggest on time, because basically you remove that time and then you aren't doing those other things. So we have to reverse engineer, make sure we're doing everything to our best of our ability. And the other thing that's happening is our motor skills, faster than any other time in our lives. Essentially, a baby is born, they can't even hold up their head, but they're learning all of these things. We develop from what's called a cephalocaudal proximal distal. Now that's a big word you don't have to remember, but essentially that's from head to toe and then from our torso out to our limbs. With our fingers, our fine motor movement being the very last thing that normally develops. But when we hand a child a screen, they're looking at the screen, they're swiping with their fingers, and all of a sudden they're using the fine motor movement first, and all of these other parts of their development, their muscles, all of these things haven't connected and made those connections. So kindergarten teachers are saying that some kids are showing up not even able to hold a pencil when they get to kindergarten. That's concerning. Another review from Stephanie Pappas of the American Psychological Association, she went over brain development. And essentially what we do know about brain development is there are massive amounts of things happening all at once. We're born with all this extra connective tissue. And if you think of this connective tissue like vines, these vines are trying to reach out and grab onto things. And the job of the world and our parents is to provide experience and interaction so that we can allow these vines to grab onto things and connect to the real world. But if we don't give them something from the real world, the connective tissues, they don't grab onto anything. So essentially it's the job of the world and parents to provide experiences and interactions that allow these vines to connect to real world experiences. And those connections become a permanent source of information for the brain, the body, and our general neurobiopsychosocial development. That's a big word. But other evidence from an article Sandy Lamont did on CNN showed that white matter, like these vines in the brain, is being disorganized. So it's causing deficits in language learning, naming objects, executive function. That's this frontal lobe part of your brain. That's where you make all your decisions, your impulsive, your higher level thinking. So it makes sense that kids are having trouble with behavior and social problems because that comes from this higher level thinking. So when they're having all these problems with this development in white matter, the expectation is then they're going to have a harder time learning to read. They're not naming letters and words and objects as easily as other kids. And if they're behind at learning to read, by the time they reach grade level, they're going to start school behind. And we know that with kids who start school behind tend to have a much harder time catching up. And it creates all sorts of other problems with self-esteem, behaviors, and social issues. So we have to be careful with screens and making sure that we're not causing our kids to fall behind before they've even started. We only get one shot at this, and it's got to last for our entire lifetime.